Welcome to Building Wealthy Habits podcast. Now, this features content and conversations with me, Randy Barkley, Jeremiah Lee, along with Laura Lee. On this podcast, we share financial advice from a team of certified financial planners, including a California licensed attorney, an MBA professional with collective experience of over 40 years.
On this week's episode of Building Wealthy Habits, myself, Jeremiah, and Randy all jump on to talk about financial planning for attorneys. And so we start by talking about some common characteristics of our attorney clients. We also talk about some of the common concerns, topics that impact both their personal and their professional lives, and we walk through some of the strategy behind each one of those. And then we have an interesting discussion about how wealth management and law, those two fields, complement each other, and any differences too between the two fields that are just really important to kind of notice. And then the last thing we talk about is the importance of planning for the entire household, and so the encouragement for attorneys and non-attorney spouses to both engage in the financial planning process. So I hope you enjoy this episode. So we had a really fun experience this morning. We're going to hustle all the kids in the car. For our listeners who don't know, we have 4 kiddos. And so we're trying to get them in the car in the morning. Do you have your backpack? Do you have your water bottle? Every check. Do you get your homework? And our second oldest, Eden, she just emits joy, this little one. And so she just says out of the blue, you know what? I just think today's going to be a fantastic day.
Doesn't that sound like her?
And we just couldn't help but laugh because we thought, gosh, all of us should start the day with that mentality. Like today?
You know what? Yeah, it's just going to be a fantastic day. That's where we're headed.
Great day.
So good. I love it. I mean, her little optimist heart is so full. And she's, the joy and the sunshine in our home. She's a delight. But I love it. I love it. It's a Wednesday, right? Middle of the week. You know what today's going to be? Today's going to be fantastic. Yeah.
Right. The rest of us are just trying to dot our I's and cross our T's.
Give her a flag to go around. It's like, this is a good day. This is a good day.
Oh, right. Yeah. Give her a little banner to hold up. Well, and I was sharing with Jeremiah because I've just had a lot of kid influence lately, not just because of the kids in our home, but last Friday I was invited to share a career day at a local elementary school. And so I made a concerted effort to try to make a presentation that would make finance really compelling to 9 to 12-year-olds. And whether or not I was successful at that, the jury is still out. But I will tell you, I had so much fun.
I like that. It's a blast either way.
Right. So maybe I'll save that for our next episode. But I came up with different illustrations and visual aids. And
finance for kids. A lot of people we talk to say, hey, high schoolers need this stuff. We need to get through this. But really, maybe elementary. Maybe that's where it's at.
I know. No,
well, let's get going here, okay? We have a program that we're going to talk about, basically financial planning for attorneys. Last week we talked about engineers, attorneys. The mindset, of course, you've got litigation people, you got transaction people, you got the training in the law, and I think Jeremiah, you can probably address the difference in the mentality.
It's so near and dear to my heart, right?
Sure.
So I think a lot of people know this, they're listening, but I worked at a large law firm for about 7 years. So billable hours, associates rising through the ranks, partnership on the horizon, all that stuff. That's part of that dynamic. And so now I get to sit in this seat of helping attorneys kind of plan for their futures. But I lived it, and so there's I think a unique empathy for what it looks like trying to be an attorney, trying to build a financial life.
You lived it, and I did too, just from a different seat. But I was your co-pilot in that process, so I get to share about what it's like being married to an attorney and how we talk about our personal finances and what impact that has been. So I love this first section. We did this for engineers as well, but let's talk about just some common characteristics that we find in our attorney clients. Again, disclaimer, these are some stereotypes. RB here, I like to call him RB. Randy talked about, there's all different types of attorneys. You've got a different kind of set of characteristics typically litigators versus transactional law, etc. But let's talk about I'll kick us off with the first one. They are very smart, highly intelligent, trained professionals. That's for sure. What are some other characteristics?
For sure. So the characteristic that comes to mind is that when you go in and sit down and talk with an attorney, if you don't have a previous relationship with them, there's this kind of get to know you kind of thing because they're acting on your behalf. And it's kind of interesting to see how they interact with you. And it's the difference between a transactional attorney who's just doing a contract for you or somebody who is going to be your gladiator. They're going to go to war for you. Mm-hmm. And there's a difference in their personalities and what they do and also how they get compensated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And attorneys are, I think, naturally they're curious. They're trained to ask questions, to look for the footnotes, to look for the gaps. And so when you're explaining something, if there's a gap in there that they perceive, most attorneys are the ones that are going to jump right to it. They're going to say, well, what about here? What about this account? And so I feel like there's a natural bringing up the gaps, bringing up the items that they're curious about or they're interested in. And it's great. Similar to engineers. I mean, engineers want to run through all the details. I think attorneys don't necessarily want to go through all the nitty gritty details the same way, but they want to identify all the possible issues.
And maybe a difference, another way that I would say that too, or frame that, is that they're highly analytical. So they want to take complex topics and be able to assess, summarize, come up with a conclusion. So they're highly analytical, similar to engineers. Unlike engineers, though, most attorneys don't have as strong of sort of a math, computational.
Yeah, they come out of more of an English background and that form, that kind of history structure. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of what I call finance experience, right?
Yeah, no, that's a major difference. And I think similar to, I'd say doctors and lawyers together, both have very specialized knowledge about what they do, went through a lot of schooling. However, finance may not be something they're interested in. It may the math and that kind of strength there may not be something that exists. So, I mean, some attorneys are very strong in the math aspects of it. Some, the last thing they want to do is talk about numbers. And I think similar with all these is there's usually high income. Like they're usually making good money. Some attorneys, especially plaintiffs attorneys, who will kind of take a case and have to work the case and run the case. If they win, they'll get a very large amount of money. Others work for more of a large law firm and it's a consistent paycheck. But generally, there's good income. There's stuff to work with and some plans to make. But all those professions, it's easy to consume that income. It's easy to let their lifestyle run away with them. So I think that's another good characteristic.
No doubt they have very busy schedules. So I know it sounds really practical, but I think it's worth mentioning that we want to be flexible, that we can cater to their schedule. So if that's a quick phone call, Zoom, text, we can meet before and after odd hours, et cetera, because especially if it's a litigation attorney or someone who needs to be in court, oftentimes they're not always in exact control of their schedule. It's really court dependent. And so we need to be flexible to meet their schedule.
And that's a key one, I think, to sit for a little bit. I mean, the lawyers, at least the ones I would work with, they're notorious for saying, yes, hey, that's a great cause. I'll show up after work. I'll come be on that board. I'll show up at that event. But then their life runs away with them in the billable hours and client needs, and they have to bail at the last minute. Mm-hmm. And they also have the constant pressure of that billable hour. It's like, hey, I need to get my hours in. I need to build this work I have and or deadlines. I just have deadlines I need to keep up with. Mm-hmm. And I would say as clients, and be on this side of the table, they have to cancel meetings periodically. They can't make what they said they would because there's some client need. And as you said, Laura, that shift of saying, hey, we'll meet in the evenings, we'll meet, go home, be with your family, put your kids to bed, and then we'll meet virtually after that. Or we'll meet on a Saturday. We've had a number of, it's not ideal for anybody. And sometimes they're still working on a Saturday, but Saturday meetings are things that are outside that normal structure, just knowing the nature of their work. I compare it very similar with ER doctors. They work different schedules. And so having to be a little flexible is key and expecting to live in that, with their schedule.
The tyranny of the urgent.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I found that's different between an engineer and an attorney is that an attorney will take more time to get to know you. There's a lot of that development of the relationship. But once the relationship has been established, they want to kind of delegate the decision process over to us. Whereas an engineer has a tendency to want to be part of all that process and that in the nitty gritty of every part of the decision. And I find that attorneys, by and large, are more relationship oriented. And once they've established a relationship, they say, I can trust you. And they pretty much delegate that. And so they like to have on the top, or what I consider the top level of information, whereas engineers want to be in the bottom level of the information. They want to be in the grass and the weeds and such. So,
well, speaking of information, let's talk about some common topics that come up when we are planning with and for attorneys. So one, it depends on when we've kickstarted our relationship with the attorney, but oftentimes they carry some school debt, and it could be fairly significant because of graduate school. So that's one of the topics that we talk about.
Yeah, you might be looking at $100,000 worth of debt. That's not an uncommon number. And how do you build that into a plan to deal with that? And there's so many government programs currently. Lori, you were just recently researching this. Like when can debt be forgiven? When do you have to pay all of it? What are the different structures that exist? And those rotate, every couple of years, every administration, it seems we're getting some new kind of student debt rules. Right.
Yeah, a lot of research, a lot of time spent getting sort of staying up to date with a lot of those programs. And really our goal is, we can't always make the debt disappear. There are some programs that offer some loan forgiveness, but for the most part, we want to strategize what's the best way to pay off the debt in light of your total portfolio. So some people assume the sooner the better. But honestly, sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you want to elongate those payments over time and invest the other money in the account. Those returns might be higher. Yeah. It just depends.
Attorneys, the public's perception of an attorney is that once you get your law degree and you become an attorney, so to speak, a practicing attorney, you're going to make really good income. What I have found is that's not necessarily the case coming out of law school. And I find that the competition to get the right job, to get the right circumstance, it's not just a walk out of the get your degree and walk into a really high paying job. And I find that it's not it's just not a matter of fact, I guess is what I'm saying. And attorneys, they're really struggling with how do I pay the debt and how do I take care of this and how do I have a household and if they're married and have children. There's a lot of factors that go into their life, right?
Yeah. I like the segue a little bit. I'll move off that is kind of the relationships of attorneys to my common topics. Spouses and children is a real common one. Looking at most law firms, you find people who are in their 60s and see which marriage they're on. Is it their first marriage, their second marriage, their third marriage? What's their relationship look like with their kids? And similar to physicians and other high stress careers, they have to be really mindful as they go forward, even from a financial sense of how do you develop and maintain these relationships? Because divorce is a massive splitter of wealth. And then the actual, out of the dollars and cents, but just the personal wealth of relationships with your family. There's a lot of attorneys who get to a point where they're estranged from their kids. And so part of that, we joke, but it's real, is for high income professionals, some of the best piece of financial advice is date night. And that very much applies to attorneys. Staying connected with their spouse. The attorneys that I worked with, most of them, their spouses also worked. And so you're dealing not just with one career, but you're dealing with two careers and trying to find your way through that. So it's I think really valuable to make sure you're investing in your relationships with your spouse, your life partner, and your kids.
Yeah, we have clients where the one client, the husband he's a retired attorney. And then we have the wife who is still engaged as an attorney. And that's an interesting relationship. He says, I'm done. I'm going to go do my own thing as far as his hobbies and outside activities from the household. But she's still engaged. She's still working. She's doing a lot of litigation. She's doing a lot of other things that takes a lot of time. And that relationship is really important. What you're talking about is that how do you meld together? And no matter what your age is, and no matter how long you've been married, it's so important to nurture that relationship over time.
Right. And so for our listeners, we are not trained therapists, but we often find that financial planning is very therapist adjacent because these are topics that come up when we're talking about how do we maximize this season of your life, or what does retirement look like? And several times as the couple is sitting down in the appointment, they may or may not have actually discussed that topic. And it could be that one person's idea of retirement is quite different than the other person's, or timing. Like you said, Dad, one person's ready to step into retirement and the other person is still really gung-ho about their career. And So that is a conversation I say that we dive into quite often, and where we sort of rest as therapist adjacent. Well, we talked about work-life balance. Let's talk about the work aspect of their life. So, obviously there's attorneys that work in all different size firms, but generally speaking, if they are in a partnership, they have to be in a partnership with another attorney. And so there are some things that we want to talk about in terms of risk management. So professional liability insurance. And we also want to talk about succession planning for law practices.
Yeah, I had a woman I was meeting with yesterday, in fact, that her attorney had retired. And she asked, so where would my estate planning stuff be if they retired? Like, did they throw it away? Does the law firm still have it? Did they, did
it disappear?
Yeah. And especially solo practitioners, they have to have, by the state bar, by the rule guidelines, they have to have contingency plans to say, if something happens to me, who then will take over my practice? Who then will make sure these documents get to the rightful owners, especially estate planning, wills and trusts, like those need to get back to the clients. But even with that, you think of two partners working together. California doesn't allow that to be a corporation unless it's a professional corporation. You're not allowed to be an LLC. And so often it's either a partnership or a professional corporation. And the liability structure is meaningful in what you're doing. And as an attorney, if you're malpractice, it blows past a lot of those regular insurances. Mm-hmm. You have to have specific malpractice insurance. So for an attorney, it's not just, are you getting a paycheck? Are you living your life? But really, like you said, Laura, if you're making good income, how are you using that income to, purchase your building or, do things that are going to build your financial future? But also, what structures do you have in place that are appropriate to allow you to keep working, in good seasons and hard seasons, with partners, without partners? All of that is very on the forefront. And similar to doctors, I would say attorneys also get creative ideas. Hey, I had a friend who said, we're going to open a car wash. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to, and they get into businesses that are outside of their normal skill set and getting some good advice on, hey, that's a great idea. Or, wow, that's a landmine. You need to stay away from that. It's really valuable to a lot of those clients.
Not every idea that comes before you is plausible. And it's not necessarily to say that idea is a bad idea, but the amount of time it takes to really build that idea into something that's profitable, you may not have the time to do that. So you got to be really careful about what you pick and choose, right? Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned malpractice insurance. I think it's interesting, too, to look at kind of a layered approach as well. So on the personal side, a PLUP or personal liability umbrella policy is something that is really important and critical for an attorney to protect their personal assets as well. So.
Yeah, that's good. One other one I'd say in this group is also charitable giving. Most attorneys are engaged civically. I don't know if most is probably too much of a word. A lot of the attorneys I worked with were very civically minded. They're engaged politically. They're engaged with different boards. They're engaged with different charitable causes. And so they're generally giving on a regular basis. And to do that strategically is really, really valuable to kind of maximize that heart of generosity, to make sure it maximizes the deduction as well as how they get that money out of their estate and into these charitable purposes. Donor advised funds are fantastic for attorneys. Donating appreciated stock is a wonderful tool to maximize that. But those are all things that they need to know about and actually live into, them and their spouse. If their spouse is going to a charity dinner, in one way or the other, they both need to have this united financial perspective of how much they want to give, when they want to give it, but also how they want to give to maximize their futures.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And did we touch on retirement planning as well? I don't think we did. So some partnerships for law firms have a lot more flexibility in terms of how they structure their retirement plans. And so I don't know, Jeremiah, do you want to comment on anything there that might be unique?
Yeah, it's interesting of 401k plans, defined benefit plans and defined contribution plans. A lot of those, when you're in a small practice, you can build some really powerful plans to get a lot of money into your retirement. The negative in that is sometimes attorneys think, well, I'm a partner. So, I just have this. And it used to be years ago, you had to buy into a partnership. If you were going to become a law firm partner, you would, put forward a significant amount of money, maybe even through a loan from the senior partners, and you'd buy in with the idea that someday you're going to buy out. They're going to buy you out of the business. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not always the case. If a practice is just winding down and no one really wants to take it over, you might not have that same exit ability to say, I have this value, I can just exit and receive. So I think attorneys need to make sure that they are aware that they're probably not going to receive a pension. If they're working for a private practice, they may not receive a partnership buyout as they intend. And the profits from partnerships aren't consistent every year. They can come and go. And so to really be mindful to build up that retirement account so you have the freedom later. If you want to change firms, if you want to do something in your career, even become a judge, move from different roles, having a 401k that you developed early on really gives you that freedom. Right?
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about wealth management and law. So how do the two industries sort of complement each other? And what are some things that, as an attorney yourself, Jeremiah, you always wish you could tell attorneys about what you do now and how different it is?
So great. Yeah. So a quick story of there was a partner in the law firm I practiced in that he said, I will do anybody's estate planning for free. Like, I'm an estate planning attorney. If you're in the firm, come on over. I'll get it done. What percentage of the firm do you think had an estate plan, even though they had access to an attorney?
Ooh, right? Pick me.
Right. And it's interesting that for whatever reason, attorneys, sometimes they think they can do it themselves. Maybe, they're planning to do it. Most attorneys are not estate planning attorneys. So they have to hire or reach out to a separate attorney to plan their estate for them, which is so valuable and important, especially if they own any sort of real estate in California. If you own your home, you very likely need a trust in California. But I was shocked at how many attorneys knew that they should have a trust. They knew exactly the guy who would get it done for them. They just had never gotten around to it.
Right. And maybe even for free.
In this instance, it was exactly for free. Right.
Right.
So I think again, that doesn't surprise me. I've had clients that are attorneys, and we go down through the things of their life, from a financial planning standpoint. And one of the big items is your estate plan in order.
Yeah.
And I am always surprised going, oh, you don't have one. And it's not that they didn't have opportunity to get one. They just didn't do it.
Yeah.
Or it could get down to the details. Like, I know between Jeremiah and I, we had estate planning documents, but we hadn't yet had the notary out to finalize the documents. And there was some span of time, I don't remember. And then we thought, we really need to get this done. And so even for someone that is in the profession, it can oftentimes be sort of lower on the priority list because it doesn't feel urgent and it doesn't feel like you have to get it done right away. So that's part of what we do.
Right. Well, I think similar to that, I think there's a lot of attorneys, this is beyond just estate planning. I think in general, they're focused on serving their clients well. They're busy, they've got deadlines, and they're really trying to do excellent work for their clients. And because of that, their personal dreams often get put on the back burner. They get deferred a bit, and it takes longer to get where they're going had they been focused on it. So I think for attorneys, there's a natural focus on, I'm serving my clients, I'm upholding my ethical duties, I am excelling at my craft, all these great things. But to really take a moment to say, hey, do I need an ally? Do I need somebody in my life to get this done for me? Like you said, Randy, be able to delegate this and just get it done. It is so valuable. And I think attorneys, if they view wealth management not as someone who is going to sell them on something, and maybe that's part of it, right? There's a lot of people that work in financial planning or wealth management that, in my mind, they're really salespeople. They're selling products, they're selling investments. But if attorneys can meet someone who's a fiduciary, that same role as an attorney would sit, but a financial advisor that's a fiduciary, and trust that person to say, hey, you're here to help me take care of what I need to take care of while I'm busy focusing on other stuff. That can be such a beautiful relationship. I think so many people that they basically just get distracted by doing their job and they forget, it never becomes a priority to get this stuff done.
Right. They need an accomplice, they need someone who can come alongside them. Maybe I shouldn't use that word accomplice.
Yeah. No, with an attorney.
Yeah, exactly. No, but somebody who's there to support them, not sell them on another product. They don't have time for that. But they need to get some of these things done, and they know how important they are. And so sometimes they need to just pay it done, but somebody who's in the same corner with them.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That might be one of the biggest pieces. I've told a lot of people that I think everyone should have, a financial advisor in their life, just so you have someone in your corner. And maybe that for attorneys, it's all the more of making sure they have that trusted relationships. They can say the hard thing, hey, get this done, and actually listen to them, but having someone in their corner for this stuff.
Yep.
So in the last little bit that we have, I want to speak again for the spouse. If you are married to an attorney and you are not an attorney, it could be that you process financial information or look at your personal finances from a different perspective. And so we've spent this episode talking about how we might connect better with our attorney clients, but our goal is always to connect with both sides of the relationship. And so we encourage and invite the spouse to participate in these meetings, ask all the questions that you have, and we will try to cater how we explain things or the information that we provide, the services that we provide in a way that also makes sense to you. Because truly for the household to understand their finances, to be steering in the right direction, the same direction for their future will be the biggest benefit to the overall outcome.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Have we covered off all the topics, at least for this week?
Yep. I think I'll just say, I think I really enjoy, probably because I'm partial, but I enjoy working with attorneys. I enjoy working with people who have clear visions for their career. They're pushing forward. They have some goals. They want to get there. And it's a really beautiful moment when they acknowledge and invite someone in to say, hey, I want to get some good places. I want to build something beautiful here. And I need an ally. I need someone in my corner. And that's a really great role I find to sit in. It's a joy of, I think, what we do.
It's a great word to end on. So, all right. Thanks so much to our listeners. We hope you have a great week.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.